Last night, Fox News erupted as Michelle Obama unleashed a venomous attack on Trump's marriage, only to face a fierce counter from Karoline Leavitt, the young press secretary, in a clash that left the studio reeling. The studio lights burned, hot, casting stark shadows across the polished desk where Karoline Leavitt, the 27-year-old White House press secretary, sat with a steely gaze. Across from her, Michelle Obama, former First Lady, leaned forward, her face a mask of barely contained fury. The host, a veteran of these high-stakes showdowns, barely had time to introduce the segment before Michelle launched her assault. Her voice was sharp, slicing through the air like a blade. Donald Trump's marriage to Melania is a sham, a hollow performance for the cameras, she declared, her words dripping with disdain. He's a man who thrives on betrayal, and Melania's just a prop in his circus. Everyone knows she's miserable, trapped in a gilded cage by a husband who cares more about his ego than his vows. The audience gasped, the accusation landing like a grenade. Michelle's hatred for Trump was no secret, but this was a new low, a personal strike aimed at unraveling the former president's carefully curated image. Leavitt's jaw tightened, but she remained composed, her fingers clasped calmly on the desk. Michelle, sensing an opening, pivoted to her next target, Leavitt herself. "And you, Karoline," she said, her tone mocking. "You're nothing but Trump's mouthpiece, a puppet parroting his lies. You're young, inexperienced, and out of your depth. Why should anyone take you seriously when you're just reading from his script?" The former First Lady's words were calculated to diminish, to paint Leavitt as a lightweight in over her head. The studio audience stirred, some nodding in agreement, others murmuring in protest. The host tried to interject, but Michelle pressed on, her voice rising. "You're a nobody in this game, Karoline. Trump picked you because you're easy to control, a loyal soldier who won't question his chaos." The atmosphere crackled with tension, the air thick with anticipation. Leavitt's eyes narrowed, but she didn't flinch. She had been underestimated before, and she knew how to turn it to her advantage. Taking a measured breath, she leaned into the microphone, her voice steady and clear. "Mrs. Obama, with all due respect, you're wrong. About President Trump, about his marriage, and about me." The audience hushed, sensing a shift. Leavitt's confidence was palpable, her words carrying the weight of someone who had earned her place. "You claim to care about truth, but you're spreading rumors to tear down a man who's fought for this country. Melania and Donald's marriage is strong, built on mutual respect and shared goals. Your attack is baseless, fueled by personal vendettas, not facts." Michelle's face twitched, a flicker of surprise crossing her features. Leavitt wasn't done. "As for me," she continued, her voice gaining strength, "I'm not here as anyone's puppet. I'm the voice of a White House that represents millions of Americans who believe in President Trump's vision. You may not like it, but dismissing me won't change that." The studio erupted in applause from one side, while others sat stunned. Leavitt had landed her first blow, and it was a direct hit. Michelle's composure faltered, her lips pressing into a thin line. She hadn't expected this young woman to push back so forcefully. The host, sensing the escalating drama, tried to steer the conversation, but Michelle wasn't ready to relent. "You're deflecting, Karoline," she snapped, her voice now laced with anger. "You can't defend Trump's character, so you hide behind platitudes. His marriage is a lie, and you're complicit in propping it up." The accusation hung in the air, a challenge Leavitt couldn't ignore. The press secretary's eyes flashed, and she leaned forward, ready to strike back. "If you want to talk about marriage, Mrs. Obama," she said, her tone icy, "maybe you should look closer to home." The audience gasped, the studio falling, silent. Leavitt's words were a bombshell, a daring move that threatened to turn the tables. Michelle's face froze, her eyes blazing with fury. What would she say to that? The Fox News stage pulsed with raw energy, the audience holding its breath as Michelle Obama's eyes burned into Karoline Leavitt. The press secretary's bold jab about Michelle's own marriage hung like smoke, thick and suffocating. Michelle's hands gripped the edge of the desk, her knuckles paling. For a moment it seemed she might unravel, but the former First Lady was no stranger to high stakes battles. Her voice, when it came, was low and venomous, each word a calculated strike. "How dare you," she hissed, "a child like you, barely out of college, presume to lecture me on my life? You've got no business dragging my marriage into this. You're grasping at rumors, Karoline, because you can't defend your boss's failures." The audience murmured, some cheering Michelle's ferocity, others stunned by the raw hostility. Leavitt didn't blink. Her face was a mask of calm, but her eyes gleamed with resolve. She'd known the risk of her words, but retreat wasn't in her playbook. "I'm not the one who started slinging mud, Mrs. Obama," she shot back, her voice steady but sharp. "You attacked President Trump's marriage with no evidence, just spite. If you can dish it out, you'd better be ready to take it." The crowd erupted, half in applause, half in shocked whispers. Leavitt's defiance was electric, a young woman standing toe-to-toe with a political titan. The host, visibly flustered, tried to interject, but the clash was too raw, too riveting. Michelle's composure cracked further, her voice rising to a near shout. "You think you can hide behind that podium and play tough? You're a nobody." Karoline, a glorified intern propped up by a man who's been fleecing America for years. "Trump's marriage is a farce, and you're too naive to see it. Melania's trapped, and you're helping him spin the lie." The accusation was vicious, meant to wound, to paint Leavitt as a clueless pawn. The studio buzzed, the tension so thick it seemed the air itself might snap. Michelle leaned forward, her gaze predatory. "You're out of your league, little girl. Go back to taking notes." The insult landed like a slap, and the audience gasped again. Leavitt's cheeks flushed, but her resolve didn't waver. She leaned into the microphone, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You keep calling me a nobody, Mrs. Obama, but I'm here because the American people trust me to speak for them. You're the one clinging to old grudges, attacking a marriage you know nothing about. President Trump and Melania are united, stronger than your smears. And if you want to talk about being out of your league, maybe ask why your own husband's been dodging those divorce rumors for years." The studio exploded, cheers and boos colliding in a deafening roar. Leavitt's counter was a masterstroke, flipping Michelle's attack back on her with surgical precision. Michelle's face contorted, fury warring with disbelief. "You're disgusting," she spat, her voice trembling with rage. "You think you can smear me with tabloid gossip and call it truth? I fought for this country while you were still in school. You're nothing but Trump's lapdog, barking on command." The personal venom in her words shocked even the host, who finally managed to stammer a call for civility. But Leavitt was undeterred. "I'm nobody's lapdog," she said, her voice rising with conviction. "I'm a voice for millions who are tired of your elitist attacks. You can't bully me into silence, and you can't rewrite the truth about President Trump." The audience was on its feet now, the studio a cauldron of noise. Michelle's hands shook as she pointed at Leavitt, her voice cracking. "You'll regret this, Karoline. You think you're untouchable? You're nothing." The threat was raw, unfiltered, a glimpse of Michelle's unraveling control. Leavitt met her gaze, unflinching, her next words poised to strike. "Regret?" she began, her tone icy. "The only thing I regret is that you've wasted this platform on hate instead of truth." The crowd roared, sensing blood in the water. Michelle's eyes widened, her fury teetering on the edge of something explosive. What would she do next? The Fox News set was a pressure cooker, the audience's roar fueling the inferno between Michelle Obama and Karoline Leavitt. Michelle's eyes blazed, her composure shredded by Leavitt's relentless counterattacks. Her hands trembled as she jabbed a finger toward the young press secretary, her voice a raw snarl. "You think you can stand there and lecture me?" she bellowed, her words slicing through the din. "I've spent decades fighting for this country, while you're just a prop for Trump's circus. You're not a voice for the people, Karoline. You're a mouthpiece for a liar who's torn this nation apart." The accusation was a thunderclap, meant to bury Leavitt under the weight of Michelle's legacy. The crowd split, some cheering Michelle's passion, others jeering her venom. Leavitt sat unflinched, her posture rigid but composed, a stark contrast to Michelle's unraveling fury. The 27-year-old's eyes locked onto her opponent, sharp and unyielding. She'd weathered the former First Lady's insults before, but this was a new level of vitriol. The host, now a bystander in his own studio, stammered a weak call for order, but the clash was beyond control. Leavitt leaned into the microphone, her voice calm but laced with steel. "Mrs. Obama, you keep trying to paint me as insignificant, but your attacks only prove one thing. You're scared. Scared of President Trump's strength, scared of his marriage's resilience, and scared of a new generation that won't bow to your narrative." The audience erupted, cheers clashing with boos in a chaotic symphony. Leavitt's words were a scalpel, cutting through Michelle's bluster with precision. Michelle's face twisted, her fury now a wildfire. "Scared?" she spat, her voice trembling with indignation. "You're delusional, Karoline. Trump's marriage is a fraud, a photo op to mask his betrayal. Melania's misery is an open secret, and you're too blind to see it. You're not a leader, you're a cheerleader for a con man." The personal edge in her attack drew gasps, the studio teetering on the edge of pandemonium. Michelle pressed on, her voice rising to a fever pitch. "You think you can drag my marriage into this and walk away? My life, my work, my family, they're untouchable. You're a speck, Karoline, a fleeting nobody who'll be forgotten by next week." The insult was a dagger, meant to crush Leavitt's spirit. But the press secretary's lips curved into a faint, defiant smile. She waited, letting the audience's murmurs swell before responding. "You call me a nobody, Mrs. Obama, but I'm here because millions of Americans chose me to speak for them. You're the one stuck in the past, hurling insults instead of facts. President Trump and Melania's bond is unbreakable, built on loyalty you can't comprehend. And as for your marriage—" Leavitt paused, her gaze piercing. "The rumors aren't mine. They're out there because people see the cracks you're trying to hide." The studio exploded, the crowd's roar shaking the rafters. Leavitt's counter was a knockout blow, turning Michelle's own tactics against her. Michelle's hands slammed onto the desk, her voice a near scream. "You're vile!" she shouted, her face a mask of rage. "You think you can smear me with lies and call it courage? I've faced worse than you and come out stronger. Trump's a disaster, and you're his enabler." The accusation was desperate, a last-ditch effort to regain control. The host, now sweating, tried to steer the conversation, but Leavitt was ready. "I'm not enabling anyone," she said, her voice rising with conviction. "I'm defending a president who fights for America, and a marriage you've tried to destroy with gossip. Look in the mirror, Mrs. Obama. Your anger's not about Trump. It's about losing your grip on the narrative." The audience was a sea of noise, some chanting Leavitt's name, others hurling jeers. Michelle's eyes glistened, her fury now tinged with something rawer, humiliation. She opened her mouth to retort, but Leavitt cut her off. "You wanted a fight, Mrs. Obama," she said, her tone icy, "but you picked the wrong target." The crowd surged, sensing a breaking point. Michelle's face crumpled, her next move a ticking bomb. Would she explode or crumble? The Fox News studio was a crucible, the crowd's roar a tidal wave crashing over the set. Michelle Obama's face, once a fortress of confidence, now betrayed a fracture, her eyes glistening with a mix of rage and vulnerability. Karoline Leavitt's Last words, "You picked the wrong target," hung in the air, a gauntlet thrown down. The audience leaned forward, sensing the former First Lady teetering on the edge. Would she lash out or collapse under the weight of Leavitt's relentless defiance? Michelle's lips trembled, her hands clenching into fists. Then, with a sudden, jagged breath, she erupted. "You're a disgrace!" she shouted, her voice cracking like glass. "You stand there, hiding behind Trump's lies, and think you've won? You're nothing but a pawn, Karoline, and history will forget you." The words were a desperate salvo, meant to claw back her dignity, but they landed hollow, drowned by the crowd's fevered noise. Leavitt, poised like a sentinel, didn't flinch. Her youth belied a steel core, honed by months in the White House's pressure cooker. She leaned into the microphone, her voice clear and unshaken. "Mrs. Obama, you've spent this entire debate attacking me, attacking President Trump, attacking his marriage. But all you've done is expose your own bitterness. Melania and Donald Trump are a united front, stronger than your smears. You, call me a pawn, but I'm a voice for Americans who are tired of being lectured by elites who've lost touch." The studio shook with applause, a wave of support that visibly rattled Michelle. Leavitt pressed on, her tone now carrying a quiet, lethal force. "You brought this fight to me, but I'm not backing down. And if you're so confident in your own legacy, why are you so threatened by a 27-year-old press secretary?" The question was a dagger, piercing Michelle's armor. Her face froze, the crowd's cheers amplifying her isolation. For a moment, she seemed to shrink, the weight of her own words, her attacks on Trump's marriage, her dismissal of Leavitt, crashing back on her. The host, sensing a breaking point, tried to pivot, but Michelle was beyond restraint. "Threatened," she snapped, her voice hoarse. "I'm not threatened by you. I'm disgusted. Trump's a fraud, his marriage is a sham, and you're complicit in his destruction of this country." The accusation was a final, frantic lunge, but it lacked the fire of her earlier attacks. The audience sensed it, their murmurs turning to jeers. Leavitt's eyes gleamed, sensing victory. "You keep repeating the same tired lies, Mrs. Obama, but they're not sticking. The American people see through it. They see a president and a first lady who stand together, and they see a White House that fights for them. You can't tear that down, no matter how loud you scream." The crowd roared, a tidal wave of approval that drowned Michelle's fading. "Resolve." Leavitt's voice rose, resolute. "As for me, I'm proud to serve this administration, and I'm done letting you bully me into silence." Michelle's hands shook, her face a mask of humiliated fury. She opened her mouth, but no words came. The studio was a cauldron of noise, Leavitt's supporters chanting her name. The former First Lady's eyes darted to the host, then the crowd, searching for an anchor. Finding none, she shoved her chair back with a screech, her voice barely audible as she muttered, "I'm done here." She stormed off the set, her heels clicking in sharp, angry bursts. The audience exploded, some cheering Leavitt's triumph, others stunned by Michelle's retreat. The host, scrambling to regain control, called after her, but Michelle was gone, leaving only the echo of her defeat. Leavitt sat back, her expression calm but triumphant, a young woman who'd just slain a giant. The studio lights dimmed, but the energy lingered, a testament to a clash that would ripple far beyond the night. Social media was already ablaze, hailing Leavitt as a conservative hero, her poise and fire reshaping the narrative. Michelle's reputation, once untouchable, now faced a storm of scrutiny, her exit a symbol of a tide turning in America's fractured political landscape.